Hi, it's Alan Saunders with Zachary Weiss of Pittsburgh Sports Now here at PPG Paints Arena, where Pitt just wrapped up a city game victory that was not as impressive as the final scores. The Panthers and Dukes had a back and forth game with not a lot of offense until Pitt pulled away late, winning by 21 points. Zach, it wasn't a particularly impressive game from many standpoints for the Dukes, but to me, the shooting percentage stands out. Just 33% from the floor, uncharacteristically low from what we've seen so far this season from them. What did you feel like the difference was?
For me, the difference was just the lack of polish that the offense showed. Everything was just rushed. 22 turnovers by far represents a season high, and other than Michael Hughes in the paint, nothing really got going. Decisions were rushed. Guards were kind of in and out of the game with no specific rhyme or reason attached to it, and Pitt just made them pay. Pitt's been a really good defensive team, and again, they showed it here again.
Yeah, I thought Pitt's defense, particularly on the perimeter, was at a level above where it's been at times, and they really needed it to be because they didn't have a ton of shooting. They weren't shooting from outside at all. Pitt only had one three-point shot until about the 8-minute mark of the second half. They really got things done by turning Duquesne over, by getting defensive rebounds, and Pitt's not a big team. They were able to out-rebound Duquesne, and especially on the defensive glass, they got those rebounds and they turned them into transition. And that's where Pitt is really good. You have guys like Audice Tony, Trey McGowan, who can get up and make athletic plays at the rim, and Duquesne didn't really have an answer for that. I felt like Duquesne needed to keep it a half-court game to be successful, and they weren't really able to do that very many times. What was Mike Hughes doing so well, though, inside? 21 points, 10 rebounds, led the game in both categories, first career double-double. Obviously, he's a guy that can compete at this level.
And you can also look at what Pitt maybe did not do, and I think Pitt had a choice to pick their poison. Do they want to limit the three and the dribble penetration drives, or do they want to just key in on the post and make that decision and make their bed and lay with it? And they chose to just let Mike Hughes kind of play him straight up, and let these fast Duquesne guards and take them out of their game, and you really saw that consistently throughout 39 of those 40 minutes, really, Alan, and it really paid dividends for Pitt. They made the right decision. They tired out a Duquesne team that was missing a post, so which maybe is why you go one-on-one with Mike Hughes. With obviously Marcus Weathers being out, that's a huge loss for Duquesne, and you saw consistently with posts having to sit with foul trouble, no one really other than Hughes being comfortable from a post position, and that was the decision Pitt made, and really it was a smart one.
Yeah, I felt like actually Weathers was going to be really important to this game for Duquesne because I felt like he presented a toughness mismatch for Pitt's guards. And the guys that end up playing at the 4 instead of him, whether it was Kelly, whether it was Rotroff, whether it was Bizzo, they're actually bigger than him, but they're not as physical. And Pitt was able to defend those guys with guards. Malik Ellison's only 6'5". He was able to effectively defend those guys, even though he gives up 4, 5, 6 inches to them. And I think that was the one place I felt like Duquesne had a mismatch. And not only did they not have Weathers, Kellen Taylor played in this game last year too. He played pretty well. Had one of his best games all year. He's another player that's able to rise to the level of physicality that you're going to see in an ACC basketball team. And I thought Duquesne missed him for the first time this year, really. This is a game that he would have played and contributed in.
Absolutely, and I think a lot of times in college basketball now, there isn't a set player, there isn't a set 4, there isn't a set 5, but with Duquesne as young as it is, and with Kellen Taylor out, you kind of have those set 4s, and Marcus Weathers clearly is Duquesne's 4. And you could kind of see Rotroff, you could see Amari Kelly, they're more 5s, and it really showed throughout, and normally Mike Hughes is in foul trouble, and for the first half he, to an extent, was. But you kind of saw that difference. There was maybe some uncomfortable positioning, maybe rotations that they might be or not used to being part of, or maybe practicing alongside guys they don't get the reps with. And there were a lot of butterfingers, a lot of inconsistent play, and I think I'm still looking for Mike Lewis. I didn't see him much tonight.
Yeah, I didn't think Mike Lewis was very effective. I didn't think Eric Williams, he got in some early foul trouble. Again, fouls were a consistent theme for the Dukes. I think Pitt got to the free throw line something like 23 times. Just too many free throws for Pitt, especially, and Mike Hughes said after the game, dumb fouls. Fouls that are just unnecessary, off ball screens and loose balls, and just a sloppy game in a lot of respects from Duquesne's standpoint. But I thought specifically when Williams went out with foul trouble in that first half, I thought I kind of had an idea coming in that this might be a tough game for Mike Lewis to work into the rotation. But I thought at that point, okay, what do you have to lose? Like, that's the guy that he can go score without Williams on the floor. Who else was there? And it just didn't happen for whatever reason.
And the other thing I noticed with Mike Lewis is Mike Lewis this season's been a guy that's been easily motivated. And one of the remarks made by Pitt was really maybe could have offended him with the whole remark earlier that Coach Capel made about recruiting Tatum. And Mike Lewis went to the same high school. Hello, duh, what about me? And it's been a tough season for him in terms of minutes and in terms of getting things going. But this is something that really could have gotten him going. But the image which sticks with me is in the first half before Eric Williams got subbed out, the two of them miscommunicated on a pass where Mike Lewis thought Eric was where he was not, and these two are the ones that understand the offense more than anybody. The body language and the shoulder shrugs and everything else that resonated from the two of them is when maybe I realized this game might be going in the other direction.
So, I mean, big picture for Pitt, this is an important win as far as just checking one more box, because if they're looking at a postseason future, they've got to get as many wins in the non-conference schedule as they can, and you know, things are looking up in that regard. They sit here at 7-1. They've got what now looks to be a kind of a winnable game at West Virginia next week. The rest of their non-conference schedule is pretty light. You know, they could come into ACC play with 12 wins, and then you only need 5 maybe in conference play to be realistic NIT options. To me, for Duquesne, the big takeaway from this game was going to be how did they match up against a team that is a talented and aggressive team, because there are some of those in the A10, and if given this result and the result at Notre Dame, I think you're looking at a Duquesne team that if they want to have a postseason, they've almost got to come out of the A10 tournament. And so then it becomes the stage. You know, how did you react to playing in a 50-50 building, playing in front of, it was probably about 11,000, 12,000 people here tonight. Obviously a bigger attendance than either of these teams averages at home. How did you feel like the Dukes, especially the young guys, sort of acclimated themselves to this environment and just showed what they are or are not capable of at this level?
I think this team is very much a work in progress, and you saw that with a lot of the guys who are being used interchangeably. Sincere Carey, who's been used to going off here in Pittsburgh, not the case tonight. Brandon Wade was brought off the bench before Mike Lewis in the second half. One pass that led to a foul. Outside of that, not really much to show for it. And you can go on down the line. Amari Kelly maybe showed the most promise, but in the same extent, he had a lot of fouls and he was out of position on a lot of the defensive sets. So you really take things from there. And with Pitt, there seems to be more certainty. With Duquesne, there's not, but there is light at the end of the tunnel for them, because the Atlantic 10 kind of is down as a conference this year. And if you settle into that 6-7, you're getting a day, maybe 2 days off, and that alone can build some legs back together, can build some momentum, and the future for them could be a positive one. But that's why you play the games, and these two games that you mentioned are really good learning experiences, and they kind of faded towards the end of both games. So they need to learn, they need to substitute effectively, and that starts with Coach Dambrot, and that goes all the way down to the 12th, 13th guy.
Yeah, and I think just the number of guys they're playing, to me, it feels awkward. I know I've talked with Coach Dambrot about it, and you know, he feels like it's something that they're going to have to do just because of the situation they're in with a lot of young players that he likes, that he wants to get minutes, that it's going to be hard for him to work the rotation. But I felt like it hurt Duquesne's offensive flow, that especially a guy like Sincere Carey, who has been one of the more reliable offensive producers for this Duquesne team. He never was able to get into any kind of rhythm. And yeah, he's facing a pretty talented defensive player in Xavier Johnson sometimes, but I just felt like the number of players and the pattern of substitutions never seemed to click. It just didn't feel like there was a rhythm to the way Duquesne was playing at any point. And yeah, that can be a lot of things. It can be the environment, the building. Pitt playing an aggressive style defense that Duquesne honestly hasn't seen a lot of. But I feel like that the Dukes definitely still have some things to figure out when it comes to their rotation, when it comes to who plays how many minutes, the order things are going to go, who's going to play with who. I thought that was one of the things too. Yeah, you talked about that miscommunication between Lewis and Williams, two guys that really ought to know better. There were plenty of other miscommunications too, where you just saw a guy and another guy look at each other like, oh, I don't know. I mean, how many minutes has Lamar Norman played with Austin Rotroff? I don't know, not very many. Like, when you have that many guys in the rotation, none of them have played that much with any of the other ones, except for maybe, 2 or 3 guys that get a lot of minutes. And I think that makes it really, really, really tough.
I think Duquesne still has a problem. Here we are after, game 6 now? I don't think they know what team they are yet, and I think that's where a lot of the substitution comes in. But you also have to remember on the front end, yes, you're trying to build these freshmen, you're trying to give them confidence, but let's not forget the back end as well. These returning players, these Mike Lewises who played 17 minutes and really 0 assists, 3 turnovers, 1 for 2 from the field. That's not the Mike Lewis Duquesne fans are used to seeing, and it's been like that all season. You don't want to lose a guy, a leader like that, someone who likes to be a leader of this team. So it's a happy balance, and I don't think it's one that Keith Dambrot has quite acclimated himself to yet. And that needs to be done within the next month before A-10 play comes. He needs to have an answer. This team needs to have an answer, and this game certainly might not have helped in getting those answers tonight, Alan.
Yeah, and I think that's a pretty good summation for just the way things went for Duquesne in general. They've got Marshall at home next week, and that should be another strong test. I mean, that's not an easy game by any stretch of the imagination. Pitt has Niagara before West Virginia next Saturday. Of course, we will be at those games, and I'll be at the ACC Championship game on Saturday. That'll be where our next broadcast is from. Until then, Zachary, Weiss, Alan Saunders, PPG Paints Arena, Pitt, the big winner in the city game. Thanks for watching Pittsburgh Sports Live.